Mommy, where is Mr. Bear? I cannot find him anywhere. My 6-year-old son stood in the middle of his bedroom, his face already crumpling with the beginning of panic. His bed was torn apart, the blankets thrown on the floor, the pillows scattered. His toy chest was open and emptied. His closet door hung wide, clothes pushed aside in a frantic search. Mr. Bear was not there. Mr. Bear, the worn brown teddy bear with the missing eye and the patched ear. Mr. Bear, who had been my son's constant companion for the past 18 months. Mr. Bear, who was the last gift my father-in-law had ever given anyone before he died. When did you last see him? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm even as my own panic began to rise. He was on my bed this morning, before Grandma came to help clean. Mommy, where is he? Before Grandma came to help clean. My mother-in-law, Vivian, had visited earlier that day while I was at a doctor's appointment. She had offered to watch Henry and do some tidying up around the house. I had been grateful for the help, not suspecting for a moment that her cleaning would extend to throwing away my son's most precious possession. Let me call Grandma, I said. Maybe she knows where Mr. Bear is. I called Vivian, my hands shaking slightly as I waited for her to answer. Hello, dear. How was your appointment? Fine, thank you. Vivian, Henry cannot find his stuffed bear. The brown one. Did you see it when you were cleaning? There was a pause. A pause that lasted just a beat too long. Oh, that ratty old thing? I threw it out. It was falling apart and absolutely filthy. I did Henry a favor, honestly. A boy his age does not need to be carrying around a dirty stuffed animal. The world seemed to stop. The air left my lungs. I could hear Henry in the background, still searching, still calling for Mr. Bear, not yet knowing that his beloved companion was gone forever. You threw it away? Yes. It was in terrible condition. The stuffing was coming out, and I am fairly certain it was a health hazard. You should thank me for getting rid of it. Vivian, that bear was a gift from Richard. It was the last thing he gave Henry before he died. Another pause. This one felt different, heavier. I know what it was. Those 4 words changed everything. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Samantha Brennan. I am 31 years old, and I have been married to my husband Michael for 8 years. We have one child, a wonderful boy named Henry who is 6 years old. He has sandy blonde hair that refuses to stay combed, and bright blue eyes that remind me so much of his grandfather, and a tender heart that feels everything deeply. 18 months ago, my father-in-law Richard was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The diagnosis came late, too late for treatment to be effective. The doctors gave him 3 to 6 months. He lasted 4. Richard was a wonderful man, kind, patient, full of stories and wisdom. He adored Henry, his only grandchild, and the feeling was mutual. Henry would spend hours with his grandfather, listening to tales of Richard's childhood, helping him in the garden, learning to play checkers and then chess as he got older. When Richard got sick, Henry did not fully understand what was happening. We tried to explain it in terms a 4-year-old could grasp. Grandpa was very sick. Grandpa was not going to get better. Grandpa was going to go to heaven soon. Henry understood that something terrible was coming, even if he could not articulate what it meant. He became clingy, not wanting to leave Richard's side during visits. He would curl up next to his grandfather on the couch, holding his hand, as if he could keep Richard tethered to the world through the strength of his grip. Richard, for his part, seemed to find peace in those moments. Even as his body was failing him, even as the pain grew worse, having Henry near brought a light to his eyes that nothing else could. That boy is my greatest joy, Richard told me once, when Henry had fallen asleep against his side. I wish I had more time with him. There is so much I still wanted to teach him. You have taught him so much already, I said. He talks about you constantly. About your stories, your games, the garden, everything. I wanted to see him grow up, graduate from school, get married, have children of his own. Richard's voice cracked slightly. I wanted to be there for all of it. You will be. In his heart, in his memories. He will carry you with him always. I hope so. I hope he remembers me. He will. I promise you, he will. A week before Richard died, when he was still lucid enough to have conversations, he asked to see Henry alone. Michael and I waited outside the hospital room while grandfather and grandson had their final private moment together. I do not know everything that was said in that room. Henry has shared bits and pieces over the years, memories that surface unexpectedly, triggered by a smell or a sound or a moment that reminds him of that day. But I know the essence of it. Richard told Henry that he loved him, that he was proud of him, that he would always be watching over him, even from heaven, and he gave him a gift. When Henry came out, he was clutching a brown teddy bear. It was not new. It was worn and faded, clearly old, with a button eye that was starting to come loose and an ear that had been stitched back on more than once. The fur was matted in places, and there was a small tear in one of the seams that had been carefully mended. "Grandpa gave me Mr. Bear," Henry said solemnly. "He said Mr. Bear has been keeping him company, and now Mr. Bear needs to keep me company. He said whenever I miss Grandpa, I should hug Mr. Bear and remember that Grandpa loves me." I looked at Michael, who had tears streaming down his face. Richard had given Henry his own childhood teddy bear. The bear that had comforted him through his own childhood fears and losses. The bear that had somehow survived 60 years of life, passed down now to the next generation. Michael had told me stories about that bear. How Richard had gotten it from his own mother when he was about Henry's age. How he had carried it everywhere, talked to it, confided in it. How the bear had survived moves across the country, years of storage, the chaos of raising children and building a life. Richard had kept it all these years, tucked away in a closet, a connection to his past that he could not bring himself to throw away. And now it belonged to Henry. "That is a very special gift," I told Henry. "You need to take very good care of Mr. Bear." "I will, Mommy. I promise." Grandpa said Mr. Bear is very old and has been through a lot of adventures. He said now Mr. Bear will have adventures with me instead. "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart." Richard died 6 days later. Henry held Mr. Bear through the funeral, clutching it to his chest as the minister spoke about life and death and the promise of heaven. He held it through the reception, when relatives kept coming up to pat his head and tell him his grandfather had loved him very much. He held it through the long, difficult weeks that followed, when the house seemed too quiet and the world seemed wrong without Richard in it. Whenever the grief became too much, whenever he cried for his grandfather, Mr. Bear was there. Henry would press the bear to his face and breathe in, finding some faint remaining scent that reminded him of Grandpa. He would talk to the bear, telling it about his day, asking it questions, pretending it was a messenger between himself and heaven. "Tell Grandpa I miss him," he would whisper at night. "Tell him I love him." The bear became Henry's most precious possession. He slept with it every night, tucked under his arm or nestled against his pillow. He talked to it when he was sad, when he was lonely, when the grief rose up unexpectedly and threatened to overwhelm him. He told it secrets and stories and all the things he wished he could still tell his grandfather. Over the 18 months since Richard's death, Mr. Bear had become even more worn. The missing button eye had never been replaced because Henry did not want him changed. The patched ear had needed additional stitching after a seam split. The fur was matted in places from being hugged and cried on and loved so fiercely. I offered multiple times to have Mr. Bear professionally cleaned or restored. Henry always refused. "Grandpa's smell is still on him," he would say. "If you wash him, Grandpa will go away." I understood. The bear was not just a toy. It was a connection to someone Henry had lost. It was tangible proof that his grandfather had existed, had loved him, had left him something to remember him by. And now it was gone. Thrown in the trash by Vivian, who knew exactly what she was throwing away. "You knew," I said into the phone, my voice barely above a whisper. "You knew that bear was from Richard. You knew what it meant to Henry." I knew it was an old, dirty toy that was falling apart. Henry needs to learn to let go of the past. Clinging to that bear is not healthy. He is 6 years old. He lost his grandfather 18 months ago. Holding on to a stuffed animal is completely normal and healthy for a grieving child. A grieving child, yes. But Henry needs to move on. Richard has been gone for over a year. It is time to stop dwelling. He is not dwelling. He is remembering. There is a difference. "Samantha, I did what I thought was best. The bear was unsanitary. It probably had mold or bacteria or who knows what else growing in it. Henry will be better off without it. Henry is going to be devastated. Do you understand that? You threw away the only physical thing he has left of his grandfather. He has photographs. He has memories. He does not need a filthy stuffed animal. You do not get to decide what he needs. You are not his mother. You had no right to throw away his belongings without asking. I was trying to help. You should be thanking me." I hung up without responding. There was nothing more to say, not to Vivian, not right now. Right now, I had to tell my son that the last gift from his beloved grandfather was gone. I found Henry still searching, now in the living room, looking under couch cushions and behind furniture. "Mommy, I still cannot find him. Did Grandma know where he is?" I knelt down so I was at his eye level. My heart was breaking, shattering into pieces as I prepared to break his. "Henry, sweetheart, I need to tell you something. Grandma Vivian, she thought Mr. Bear was old and needed to be thrown away. She put him in the trash." Henry stared at me, not comprehending at first. The words did not make sense. Mr. Bear could not be in the trash. Mr. Bear was his. Mr. Bear was Grandpa's gift. Mr. Bear was supposed to be with him forever. "In the trash," he repeated. But that is where garbage goes. Mr. Bear is not garbage." "I know, sweetheart. Grandma made a mistake. We have to get him back. We have to go get him out of the trash." I had already thought of this, already calculated the timing. Vivian had been here this morning. The garbage had been collected at noon. It was now 3 in the afternoon. The garbage truck already came, baby. Mr. Bear. Mr. Bear is gone. The sound that came out of my son was not crying. It was not screaming. It was something worse. A low, keening wail that seemed to come from the deepest part of him. The sound of a heart breaking. The sound of grief reopened. He collapsed onto the floor, curling into himself, sobbing with an intensity that frightened me. I gathered him into my arms and held him as he cried, as he called for Mr. Bear, as he called for Grandpa, as all the grief he had been managing with the help of that worn brown bear came flooding back with nothing to contain it. "I want Mr. Bear back," he sobbed. "I want Grandpa back. Why did Grandma throw him away? Why does everyone leave me? I am right here, sweetheart. I am not leaving you. Daddy is not leaving you. But Grandpa left. And now Mr. Bear is gone too. Grandma took him away. She took my grandpa away." He did not mean it literally, of course. Vivian had not caused Richard's death. But in his 6-year-old mind, the loss of Mr. Bear and the loss of Grandpa were now intertwined. The bear had been his way of holding on to Richard. Without the bear, Richard felt truly gone in a way he had not before. Henry cried for 2 hours. He cried until he was exhausted, until he had no tears left, until he fell asleep in my arms from sheer emotional depletion. I carried him to his bed and lay him down, and even in sleep his hands kept reaching, searching for something that was not there. When Michael came home from work, I told him what had happened. I watched his face go through the same stages mine had. Confusion, disbelief, horror, and then rage. "She knew," Michael said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "She knew what that bear meant, and she threw it away anyway." That is what she said. When I asked if she knew, she said, "I know what it was." She did not even try to deny it. Why? Why would she do that? She said Henry needs to move on, that he has been grieving too long, that the bear was unhealthy. Unhealthy? A stuffed animal that helps a child cope with the death of his grandfather is unhealthy. That is what she believes. Or that is what she wants us to think she believes. What do you mean? I had been thinking about this since the phone call. Thinking about Vivian's reaction, her tone, the pause when I mentioned Richard. There was something more here than a misguided attempt to help Henry move on. Your mother never liked that bear. She made comments about it more than once. How it was old, how it was dirty, how Henry was too attached to it. But I think there is more to it than that. Like what? I think she was jealous. Jealous that Henry had something from Richard that he treasured so much. Your father and your mother did not have an easy marriage toward the end. They were practically separated when he got sick. She came back to take care of him, but there was still tension there. You think she threw away the bear because she was jealous of my father's relationship with Henry? I think she threw away the bear because it represented something she did not have. Richard gave that bear to Henry, not to her. Richard's love for Henry was uncomplicated in a way his relationship with Vivian was not. And every time she saw Henry with that bear, she was reminded of that. Michael was quiet for a long moment, processing this. His parents' marriage had been troubled for years. Richard's death had come during a period of separation, when Vivian had moved into an apartment across town. She had come back to care for him only when the diagnosis became terminal. Even if that is true, Michael said finally, it does not excuse what she did. She threw away my father's last gift to his grandson. She destroyed something irreplaceable. I know. And she needs to be held accountable for that. We spent the next 3 days dealing with the aftermath. Henry was inconsolable. He refused to eat more than a few bites at each meal. He barely slept, waking multiple times each night crying for Mr. Bear. He kept going to his bed and looking for the bear, as if it might magically reappear if he just looked hard enough. The grief counselor we had seen after Richard's death made an emergency appointment. She explained that Henry was experiencing a secondary trauma, a loss that had reopened the wound of his grandfather's death. The bear had been a transitional object, she said, something that helped Henry manage his grief and maintain a connection to Richard. Losing it suddenly and unexpectedly was almost like losing Richard all over again. He needs time, she said. And he needs validation that his feelings are appropriate. Do not try to minimize the loss or suggest he should be over it quickly. Let him grieve the bear the same way you let him grieve his grandfather. I thought about Vivian's words. Henry needs to move on. He needs to let go of the past. Clinging to that bear is not healthy. Everything the counselor was telling us contradicted what Vivian believed. Is there anything we can do to help him? I asked. Anything that might ease the pain? Sometimes it helps to create a new connection to the person who was lost. A different kind of memorial that honors the relationship in a new way. It will not replace what was lost, but it can provide a new path forward. I thought about this as we drove home. A new connection. A different memorial. Something that honored Richard's relationship with Henry in a way that could not be thrown away. And then I thought of something else. A possibility that had not occurred to me in the chaos of the first day. Michael, do you remember where your father got that bear? Was it his childhood toy? Yes. He said he had it since he was about Henry's age. His mother gave it to him. Was it a special bear? A limited edition or something, or just a regular teddy bear? I do not know. Why? Because if it was a common bear, a mass-produced toy, there might be others like it. There might be a way to find a replacement. A replacement? Would that even help? Henry would know it was not the real Mr. Bear. Maybe. But maybe having something identical, something that looks and feels the same, would help. Even if he knows it is not the original, it might be comforting. That night, after Henry finally fell into an exhausted sleep, I started searching online. I described the bear as best I could: brown fur, about 12 inches tall, button eyes with one missing, stitched ear, probably manufactured in the 1960s based on Richard's age. It took hours of searching through vintage toy sites, collector forums, and auction listings. I learned more about antique teddy bears in those hours than I had ever known before. How to identify manufacturers by the shape of the nose, the positioning of the ears, the style of the stitching. How certain bears from certain eras were now collector's items worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. How online communities of teddy bear enthusiasts traded information and helped each other track down specific toys. I posted on several forums, describing Mr. Bear in as much detail as I could remember. The brown fur, slightly matted from decades of love. The button eyes, one of which had been missing for years. The stitched ear where a seam had split and been carefully repaired. The general shape and size, about 12 inches tall, with a slightly rounded belly and arms that were just long enough to hug. The responses came quickly. Several people offered suggestions about possible manufacturers. A woman from Ohio posted a photograph of a bear that looked similar but was not quite right. A collector from California suggested checking estate sales in the area where Richard had grown up. And then, 3 days into my search, I found it. A listing on an antique toy site, posted by a seller in Vermont. A brown teddy bear, approximately 12 inches tall, manufactured by the Ideal Toy Company in 1962. The same brown fur. The same size and shape. The same style of button eyes. Even the same slightly rounded belly that I remembered from Mr. Bear. The price was high, almost $300 for a worn stuffed animal. The seller noted that the bear was in loved condition, which apparently meant it had been well used and showed signs of wear. To me, that was perfect. A brand new bear would have felt wrong. Henry needed something that looked like it had been loved for 60 years. I did not hesitate. I bought it immediately, paying extra for expedited shipping. The next 3 days were agony. I checked the tracking number constantly, watching the package move from Vermont to Massachusetts, from a sorting facility to a delivery truck to, finally, our front porch. When the bear arrived, I opened the package with trembling hands. And there it was. Not Mr. Bear, exactly. The fur was a slightly different shade of brown, more golden than the original. The button eyes were both intact, unlike Mr. Bear's missing one. The ears were both firmly attached, no patches or repairs. But the shape was right. The feel was right. With the right modifications, it could be close enough to provide comfort. I did not give it to Henry right away. First, I needed to make some modifications to make it more like the original. I carefully removed one button eye, using small scissors to cut the threads that held it in place. I left a small indentation where the button had been, just like Mr. Bear's missing eye. Then I worked on the ear. I carefully opened one of the seams with a seam ripper, then stitched it back together with visible thread, mimicking the repair that had been done on Mr. Bear years ago. The stitches were deliberate, obvious, a sign that this bear had been loved enough to be mended. When I was done, I held up the bear and examined it critically. It was not perfect. Someone who had known Mr. Bear well would be able to tell the difference. But for a grieving 6-year-old, it might be close enough. It might provide the comfort he desperately needed. Then I did something I had not planned. Something that felt right even though I could not explain why. I took the bear to Michael's father's grave. The cemetery was quiet that afternoon, the kind of peaceful stillness that makes you feel like you are in a place between worlds. Richard's grave was marked by a simple headstone, gray granite with his name and dates and the words, "Beloved Father and Grandfather," carved into the stone. I sat down on the grass beside the grave, holding the bear in my lap. I felt slightly foolish, sitting there talking to a headstone, but I also felt like it was the right thing to do. Like Richard might somehow hear me, might somehow be able to help. "Richard, I do not know if you can hear me," I said quietly. "I do not know how any of this works, but I need your help." I told him everything. About Vivian throwing away Mr. Bear. About Henry's devastation. About the days of crying and not eating and nightmares about Grandpa leaving. "I found a bear that looks like Mr. Bear," I continued. "It is not the same. I know it is not the same. But I am hoping it can help Henry. I am hoping it can give him something to hold on to." I held the bear up, as if showing it to Richard. "I need you to put your love in this bear too, the way you put it in the first one. I know that sounds crazy. I know I am talking to a piece of stone and expecting magic to happen. But Henry needs you. He needs to know you are still with him. And this bear is the only way I know to give him that." I sat there for an hour, holding the bear, talking to Richard as if he could hear me. I told him about Henry's progress in school, about his friends and his hobbies and the little things that made him who he was. I told Richard about the man I hoped Henry would become, shaped by the lessons Richard had taught him. "He is going to be wonderful," I said. "He is already wonderful. You would be so proud of him. And I know you are watching over him. I just need him to feel that. I need him to know it in a way he can touch and hold." When I finally stood up to leave, I brushed the grass off my pants and looked at the headstone one more time. "Thank you, Richard, for loving Henry so much, for giving him Mr. Bear in the first place, and for whatever you can do now to help us through this." I do not know if Richard heard me. I do not know if spirits exist or if they can influence the physical world. But when I picked up the bear to leave, it felt different somehow. Warmer. More substantial. As if something had settled into it while I sat there. Maybe it was my imagination. Maybe it was wishful thinking. Maybe it was just the sun warming the fur after an hour of sitting in the afternoon light. But I chose to believe that Richard had heard me and had found a way to make this new bear special too. I gave the bear to Henry that evening. I explained what I had done, honestly and completely. "This is not Mr. Bear," I said. "The original Mr. Bear is gone, and I cannot bring him back. But I found a bear that looks just like him, from the same company that made him, from around the same time. I thought maybe you might want to have him. Maybe he could be Mr. Bear's brother. Someone to keep you company until you see Grandpa again someday." Henry looked at the bear for a long time without touching it. I could see him struggling, wanting to accept the comfort being offered but afraid that it would mean forgetting the original, forgetting Grandpa. "I took him to Grandpa's grave," I added. "I asked Grandpa to put his love in this bear too, the way he put it in the first one. I do not know if he heard me, but I wanted to try." Henry reached out slowly and touched the bear's fur. He ran his fingers over the missing button eye, the stitched ear. He lifted the bear and held it to his face, breathing in. "He does not smell like Grandpa," Henry said quietly. "No, he does not. He is not the same bear. But maybe over time, he can become special in his own way. Can I call him Mr. Bear too? Or is that wrong?" "You can call him whatever you want. This is your bear now. He belongs to you. Henry held the bear closer, tucking it under his chin the way he used to hold the original. Maybe I will call him Mr. Bear Jr., because he is like Mr. Bear's son. I think that is a perfect name. Henry slept with Mr. Bear Jr. that night. He still cried, still reached for the original in moments of half-sleep. But having something to hold, something that looked like his lost companion, helped. The grief counselor was right. It was not a replacement, but it was a new path forward. The confrontation with Vivian came a week after the bear was thrown away. Michael and I had been planning it carefully, deciding how to address what she had done without causing more trauma for Henry. We went to her house without Henry. This was a conversation he did not need to witness. Before you say anything, Vivian started as soon as we sat down, I want you to know that I stand by my decision. That bear was unsanitary and it was keeping Henry from moving on. That is not for you to decide, Michael said. His voice was calm, controlled, but I could hear the steel underneath. Henry's grief process is not your business. His possessions are not yours to throw away. I was trying to help. You should be grateful. Grateful? Our son has been devastated for a week. He has barely eaten. He has been having nightmares. He thinks you threw away his grandfather because that bear was his last connection to Dad. That is exactly the problem. He was too attached to that bear. It was not healthy. The grief counselor disagrees with you. She said the bear was a transitional object, a healthy way for Henry to process his loss. She said throwing it away was traumatic for him. Grief counselors, Vivian scoffed. In my day, we did not need counselors to tell us how to feel. We just got on with things. In your day, children were expected to suppress their emotions and suffer in silence. That is not how we are raising Henry. Perhaps that is why he is so fragile. Too much coddling, not enough toughness. I had been silent until now, letting Michael take the lead in confronting his mother. But this was too much. Fragile, I said. Henry is 6 years old. He lost someone he loved deeply, and he found a healthy way to cope with that loss. There is nothing fragile about grief. There is nothing weak about needing comfort. Comfort from a stuffed animal is for babies. Comfort from a connection to someone we love is for everyone, at any age. You might understand that better if you had not spent the last years of your husband's life living in a separate apartment. The room went very quiet. I had said something that could not be taken back, something that touched on wounds that had nothing to do with Mr. Bear. That is none of your business, Vivian said, her voice icy. You are right. It is not. Just like Henry's grief process is none of yours. But you made it your business when you decided to throw away Richard's last gift to his grandson. So let me make something very clear. I leaned forward, making sure she was looking directly at me. I know why you really threw away that bear. It was not because it was dirty or unsanitary. It was because you were jealous. Jealous of the relationship Richard had with Henry. Jealous that Henry loved that bear because it came from Richard. Jealous that your husband's memory lived on in our home in a way it does not in yours. Vivian's face had gone white. That is not true. It is true. You told me yourself that you knew what the bear was. You knew it was Richard's gift, his last gift, the thing Henry treasured most. And you threw it away anyway. Not to help Henry. To hurt him. To take away his connection to Richard because you could not stand that he had something from Richard that meant so much to him. I would never. You did. You knew exactly what you were doing, and you did it anyway. And now you have to live with that. You have to live with the knowledge that you broke your grandson's heart because of your own jealousy and bitterness. Vivian looked at Michael, expecting him to defend her, to tell me I had gone too far. He did not. Mom, what Christine said is harsh. But I think she might be right. Your relationship with Dad was complicated. You were separated when he died. You came back to care for him, but there was still so much unresolved between you. And Henry. Henry had what you did not have. An uncomplicated, pure love from Dad. The bear was a symbol of that. I loved Richard, Vivian said, her voice breaking. Despite everything, I loved him. I know you did. But you did not have what Henry had. And instead of being happy that Dad's love lived on through Henry, you resented it. You resented a 6-year-old boy for having a stuffed animal. Vivian was crying now, tears streaming down her face. I did not mean to hurt him. I could not stand looking at that bear anymore. Every time I saw it, I remembered that Richard had something left to give. That he gave it to Henry instead of trying to fix things with me. His last gift went to a child, not to his wife of 35 years. That is not Henry's fault, I said, my voice softening slightly despite my anger. And it was not the bear's fault. Richard gave Henry something precious because he loved him. Punishing Henry for that love is cruel, Vivian. It is cruel and it is wrong. I know it was wrong. I was hurting. I am still hurting. Richard is gone and we never got to fix things. We never got to say what we needed to say. And now it is too late. It is too late with Richard, Michael said. But it is not too late with Henry. You can still fix this, Mom. You can apologize to him. You can explain that you made a mistake because you were sad and hurting. You can start rebuilding the trust you broke. Will he forgive me? I do not know. He is 6. He might forgive you quickly because children are generous. Or he might remember this for the rest of his life because it hurt him so deeply. But you have to try. You have to at least try to make this right. Vivian nodded, wiping her eyes. I want to try. I do love Henry. I love him so much. I let my own grief turn into something ugly. That is what grief does sometimes, I said. It makes us do things we would never do otherwise. But you have to take responsibility for those things. You have to own what you did and try to fix it. The apology came a few days later. Vivian came to our house, sat down with Henry, and told him she was sorry. She explained that she had been sad about Grandpa too, and that her sadness had made her do something mean. She did not make excuses. She did not minimize what she had done. She simply apologized and asked for forgiveness. Henry listened to her solemnly. Mr. Bear Jr. clutched to his chest. Did you throw away Mr. Bear because you were mad at Grandpa? He asked. I was not mad at Grandpa. I was sad. And sometimes when people are very sad, they do things that hurt other people. That is not okay. I should not have thrown away Mr. Bear, no matter how sad I was. I am sad about Grandpa too. But I did not throw away anyone's stuff. You are right. You handled your sadness much better than I did. I am proud of you for that. Mommy found me a new bear. Mr. Bear Jr. He is not the same as Mr. Bear, but Mommy took him to Grandpa's grave and asked Grandpa to put love in him too. Vivian looked at me, surprised and perhaps moved by this detail. That was very thoughtful of your Mommy. She said Mr. Bear Jr. can be special in his own way. Not the same as Mr. Bear, but still special. That sounds right. Sometimes we lose things we love, and we cannot get them back. But we can find new things to love that help us remember the old things. Like Mr. Bear Jr. helps me remember Mr. Bear, who helps me remember Grandpa? Exactly like that. Henry thought about this for a moment. Then he held out Mr. Bear Jr. Do you want to hold him, Grandma? He is soft. Vivian took the bear with trembling hands. He is soft. He is lovely, Henry. I am so glad your mommy found him for you. Me too. I still miss Mr. Bear. But Mr. Bear Jr. is good too. It was not complete forgiveness. Henry did not forget what Vivian had done. For months afterward, he was wary around her, keeping Mr. Bear Jr. close whenever she visited, watching to make sure she did not touch his things without asking. Every time Vivian reached toward a toy or a book or anything that belonged to Henry, he would tense up. He would pull the item closer to himself, or ask me to hold it, or simply move away from her. The trust had been broken, and rebuilding it would take time. Why does Henry always move away from me? Vivian asked me once, about 2 months after the incident. Because you threw away his most precious possession. He is afraid you will do it again. I would never. I know what I did was wrong, but I learned my lesson. Henry does not know that. All he knows is that he trusted you with something he loved, and you put it in the garbage. That is hard for a 6-year-old to get over. What can I do? Give him time. Be consistent. Show him through your actions that you respect his things. Do not touch anything of his without asking permission first. Do not make comments about his belongings being old or dirty or worthless. Let him see that you understand what you did was wrong. Vivian tried. I will give her credit for that. She stopped picking up Henry's toys without permission. She stopped making comments about Mr. Bear Jr. being a replacement or less than the original. She asked before touching anything in his room or his space. But slowly, over time, the wariness faded. Vivian was true to her word. She did not try to throw away any more of Henry's possessions. She did not criticize his attachment to Mr. Bear Jr. She let him grieve in his own way, in his own time, without judgment or interference. The breakthrough came about 6 months after the incident. Henry was at Vivian's house for a visit, and he accidentally left Mr. Bear Jr. in her living room when we went home. He did not realize it until bedtime, and the panic that ensued was immediate and intense. Mr. Bear Jr. I left him at Grandma's house. Mommy, we have to go get him. It was 9 o'clock at night. The drive to Vivian's house was 30 minutes each way. Henry had school the next morning. Everything in me wanted to tell him to wait until the next day. But I looked at his face, at the terror in his eyes, and I could not say no. Let me call Grandma first, I said. Maybe she can bring him to us. I called Vivian, explained the situation, expected her to suggest we pick him up in the morning. Instead, she said, I am already getting in the car. I will be there in 30 minutes. She drove 30 minutes in the dark to bring Henry his stuffed animal. When she arrived, she handed Mr. Bear Jr. to Henry with obvious care, treating the worn bear like the precious object he was. I know how important he is to you, she said. I did not want you to have to sleep without him. Henry looked at her for a long moment, then did something he had not done in 6 months. He hugged her. Thank you, Grandma. You are welcome, sweetheart. I will always take care of your things from now on. I promise. That was the turning point. Not the apology, not the conversations, not the time that had passed. That single act, driving 30 minutes in the dark to return a stuffed animal, showed Henry that Vivian understood. That she took his attachment seriously. That she would go out of her way to protect what he loved. She also started therapy, finally addressing the unresolved grief over Richard's death and the complicated feelings about their marriage. She never became the warm, doting grandmother I wished Henry had. But she became a safer one. A more careful one. A grandmother who understood that her own pain did not give her the right to inflict pain on others. Henry is 8 now. Mr. Bear Jr. still sleeps on his bed, though he does not need to hold him quite so tightly anymore. The acute grief has faded into something softer, a background awareness of loss that does not dominate his days. He still talks about Grandpa sometimes. He still visits the grave with us on Richard's birthday and the anniversary of his death. He still tells Mr. Bear Jr. stories about the adventures Grandpa used to describe. "Do you think Mr. Bear and Grandpa are together in heaven?" he asked me recently. "I think they might be," I said. "I think Grandpa found Mr. Bear and is taking care of him until he sees you again." That is good. I did not want Mr. Bear to be alone. He is not alone, and neither are you. Henry hugged Mr. Bear Jr. and smiled. "I know, Mommy. I have you and Daddy and Mr. Bear Jr. And I have memories of Grandpa that no one can throw away." That is right, sweetheart. Memories are something no one can take from you. Not ever. Last Christmas, Vivian surprised us all. She gave Henry a professionally made scrapbook filled with photographs of Richard, pictures from throughout his life, many that we had never seen before. On the first page, there was a photograph of Richard as a young boy, about Henry's age, holding a brand new brown teddy bear. "That is Mr. Bear," Henry shouted when he saw it. "That is Mr. Bear when he was new." "Yes," Vivian said quietly. "That was my husband's most treasured possession. I should have understood why it became yours." Henry studied the photograph intently, tracing the outline of the bear with his finger. "Thank you, Grandma. Now I can see what Mr. Bear looked like before he was loved so much." "You are welcome, Henry. I am sorry it took me so long to understand what that bear really meant. It was not perfect. It did not undo what had been done. But it was something. A step toward healing. A gesture that showed Vivian was still trying, still working to repair what she had broken. I think about that original Mr. Bear sometimes. About where he might be now, decomposing in a landfill somewhere, forgotten by everyone except us. It makes me sad to think about it. An object that had been loved for over 60 years, that had comforted 2 generations, that had witnessed so much life and love, ending up in the garbage. I wonder if he knew, somehow, that he was being thrown away. I know that is a strange thing to wonder about a stuffed animal. But after everything that happened, after watching how much love Henry poured into that bear, it is hard to think of it as just an object. It had become something more. A vessel for memories. A connection between the living and the dead. Vivian did not understand that. She looked at Mr. Bear and saw a dirty, falling-apart toy. She did not see the years of Richard's childhood compressed into that worn fur. She did not see the final gift from a dying grandfather to the child who adored him. She did not see Henry's grief made tangible, something he could hold and cry into and talk to when the loss became too much to bear alone. That is the danger of not understanding how children process grief, of thinking that objects are just objects, that letting go means throwing away, that moving on requires erasing the past. Henry did not need to erase Richard to move forward. He needed to carry Richard with him. Mr. Bear was his way of doing that. And when Vivian took that away, she took away more than a stuffed animal. She took away Henry's sense of security, his belief that the things he loved were safe, his trust in the adults who were supposed to protect him. We have rebuilt some of that trust, slowly, over time. But it will never be complete. Henry will always remember what happened. He will always know that his grandmother, in a moment of jealousy and pain, chose to hurt him rather than deal with her own emotions. I hope he learns something valuable from that experience. Not cynicism, not mistrust, but awareness. The understanding that even people who love us can sometimes do things that hurt us. That family is not a guarantee of safety. That protecting your own heart sometimes means setting boundaries with people who should know better. But then I look at Mr. Bear Jr., worn now from 2 years of Henry's love, and I remember what matters. Not the object itself, but what it represents. The love that passed from Richard to Henry. The connection that survives death. The comfort that can be found in something soft and familiar. Mr. Bear Jr. may not be the original. But he has become something in his own right. He has absorbed 2 years of Henry's tears and secrets and nighttime fears. He has witnessed 2 years of growth and healing and memories. He has become, in his own way, a vessel for love. That is what Vivian tried to destroy and could not. Not a stuffed animal, but love itself. Love that found a way to continue even when its original form was taken. Love that could not be thrown away because it lived in hearts, not in objects. Henry understands this now, in the way that 8-year-olds understand things. He knows that Grandpa's love is not in Mr. Bear Jr. or even in the original Mr. Bear. It is in him, in his memories, in his heart, in the person he is becoming, shaped by all the time he spent with his grandfather. Sometimes I watch Henry sleeping, Mr. Bear Jr. tucked under his arm, and I think about the long chain of love that connects them all. Richard's mother, who gave him the original bear. Richard, who kept it for 60 years and then passed it to Henry. Henry, who loved it fiercely until it was taken away. And now Mr. Bear Jr., the replacement who became something real in his own right. Love passes from generation to generation like that. Through objects sometimes, but more importantly through memories, through stories, through the ways we teach our children to be kind and brave and loving. Vivian tried to break that chain. She failed. Because the chain is made of something stronger than stuffed animals. It is made of love itself, which cannot be thrown in the garbage, cannot be carted away by a truck, cannot be destroyed by jealousy or bitterness or grief. That is the story I will tell Henry when he is older. That is the lesson I want him to take from this painful chapter of his childhood. Some people will try to take away the things you love. Some people will try to destroy your connections to the people who matter most. Some people will act out of their own pain in ways that cause you pain. But they cannot take your memories. They cannot destroy your love. They cannot throw away what lives in your heart. Hold on to that. Let it comfort you when the world is dark and scary. Let it remind you that you are never truly alone, because the people who love you are always with you, whether they are here or in heaven or watching over you from somewhere we cannot see. That is what Mr. Bear taught Henry. That is what Mr. Bear Jr. continues to teach him. That is what I hope he will teach his own children someday, passing down the wisdom of a worn brown teddy bear who carried love across generations. Some things are stronger than death. Some connections cannot be severed. Some love cannot be thrown away. Remember that. Always. Thank you for listening to my journey of discovering what motherhood truly means. I have left 2 more stories on your screen, each from mothers who learned that protecting a child can mean standing alone against those once called family. Choose the one that speaks to you. And if you want to join a community of parents who fight for their children, that notification bell is waiting. Until tomorrow, remember, blood connects us, but a mother's love protects us.